Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Apologies for the poor camera quality on the road at the present time in a dingy hotel room. Plenty to discuss today. An update on the driver lineup potentially for 2022, but also after an underwhelming Austrian Grand Prix performance of Red Bull at their home race, can they rebound at the French Grand Prix? They believe they can, especially with an upgrade on the work for Paul Ricard. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. Firstly, driver update. We'll look to the fact that Daniel Ricciardo could well be out of the McLaren seat. He has confirmed to himself that he is committed to McLaren and will not be walking away from the sport. That was the rumour that McLaren were effectively kind of committed to him, but if he was going to leave, then they were going to look for replacements. Now the question is really the other way around, right? Ricciardo seems keen to stay. Do McLaren actually echo those sentiments, right? Because it's been made relatively clear by McLaren themselves. They're like, look, they love Daniel Ricciardo as a driver, right? But at the end of the day, if he's not going to be as good as Lando, they can't realistically keep him on. And there are a few options now that are raising themselves as a possibility to take Ricciardo's place. So he's saying that he's going to be there next year, but we've seen this in the past where drivers believe they've got the seats secured for next season, and then all of a sudden that's no longer the case, especially because Alex Palou is actually going to be joining the McLaren IndyCar setup or possibly Formula E. They say they're going to confirm exactly what their full driver lineup is going to be all across the board, but yeah, Colton Herta is rumoured to be coming in, Pato O'Ward is there as well, a few drivers that seemingly are having test drives in the Formula 1 car, potentially drivers that they are scouting to replace Ricciardo in, well, the McLaren seat, whether next season or the season after. Palou actually has been a name that's been around like with some serious Formula 1 potential, so we'll see how that one goes, but yeah, far from convinced honestly that Ricciardo is going to be in the seat for next season, despite of course the statement that he says. Still feel like it's kind of a 50-50 deal at the present time. Depends a lot of course on what happens through the rest of the year. Now one of the drivers that was rumoured to be potentially taking his place was Sebastian Vettel, currently kind of having a hard time over at Aston Martin. Now Mike Crack, the kind of the head guy over there, says we are in talks. Sebastian is very positive, very constructive, so from that point of view I hope that we can continue. So it seems like he's confident Vettel is going to stay. Whether that happens, who knows? Like look, if the Aston Martin car doesn't improve, Vettel might just like call it a day, to be honest, at the end of the season. But if that McLaren seat is open, then that of course is a potential option as well, however unlikely it might indeed seem. Now let's talk Alpine, because next season Alonso probably is still going to be there. I'm expecting it to still be Alonso and Ocon. They're going to figure out what they're going to do with Piastri, send him off to Williams or whatever for a season. But either way, surely Alonso's performed well enough so far this year to be deserving of keeping that seat. He's actually out-qualified Ocon. He's the only driver to have out-qualified their teammates head-to-head, but still have fewer points, which is pretty tough really for Alonso, right? Like the amount of bad luck really he's had so far this year. But of course, right now it does certainly seem that the Alpine is the fourth quickest car. They probably would have already overtaken McLaren in the standings if it hadn't have been for Alonso's bad luck earlier on this season. And it has actually been stated that Alpine are looking to sign another 75 staff in order to, as they claim, fight with the big teams. So last season, of course, it was pretty much the Mercedes Red Bull show at the top. Then it was McLaren versus Ferrari for third place. Then Alpine were kind of like best of the rest effectively, even though, you know, Alpha Tauri was even up there last season for a time. And now they reckon that kind of solidifying themselves as the fourth quickest team this year, they want to be fighting with the big dogs. They want to be expanding their staff and try and make a car that actually could compete with the top team. So that's pretty ambitious. You love to see the ambition. And maybe a guy like Alonso can really lead a setup like this to great success. Interesting stuff, no doubt about it. Let's of course talk Alpha Tauri real quick, because their car is pretty much tragic this year. Both Gasly and Tsunoda look individually worse than they did last season, but I think the car certainly has something to blame for that. They believe they're bringing a reasonably large upgrade for the French Grand Prix, Gasly's home race. Whether it makes any difference, we shall see. But yeah, the Alpha Tauri, like the best it really did was at Baku when it kind of looked like the best of the rest. But apart from that, it's been a pretty tragic car so far this year. So we'll see what they can possibly come up with. Let's talk Leclerc Verstappen. Red Bull versus Ferrari. Big talking point, of course, back of the Austrian Grand Prix. Ferrari, much better pace over the course of the weekends. Will that continue into Paul Ricard? And are Red Bull going to bring an update to this race to actually prevent that from happening, right? And there's all been this talk from Red Bull, right? The fact that, okay, we need the budget cap increase. We can't afford all these kind of upgrades. It's going to go to the end of the season and we're not going to be able to even race at the end of the season, Red Bull was saying, because we don't have enough money to actually do it with the freight and transport costs. Turns out they're still bringing as many upgrades as seemingly every other team is, or at least trying to at the present time. So Ferrari took a step forward, it seemed, at that race, and Red Bull are kind of, well, trying to catch up to get back in the same level playing field. And apparently they have an upgrade ready to go for Paul Ricard, or at least in the works for the French Grand Prix. Whether they can actually get it ready to go yet is another question entirely, right? And some people were certainly speculating that, well, looks like Checo Perez won't be getting the upgrade, right? If there is one car that can get the upgrade here, it's going to be Max Verstappen's, and Perez may well have to wait. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But yeah, there's of course been some talking point about, okay, what exactly are they going to do? It definitely seemed like the tyre degradation degradation was the key factor. And in fairness, as Leclerc kind of points out right here, we also had a fast race car back in Spain, Monaco, Baku, Canada, and Silverstone, just never actually had a smooth weekends. And, we've known each other so long. I know his weaknesses, he knows mine. We respect each other, said Leclerc on Verstappen. But of course, Red Bull themselves are kind of gone on to say, or at least it has been hinted, that there has been an upgrade that is being produced for Paul Ricard. But it must also be said that looking back at tracks like Silverstone and, of course, Spielberg, kind of, more sometimes fast-flowing corners, a track like Paul Ricard's, it does kind of seem to potentially suit the Ferrari a bit more than the Red Bull, even though that's not necessarily the case. We'll see that here in a second, especially in terms of tyre degradation. But again, apparently Red Bull have said they've got a new upgrade in the works for France. Not sure if it'll be finished though quite as of yet. And even Red Bull themselves, expecting they'll be quick Ferrari around Paul Ricard. So we shall see about that one. As he said after the race, it looks like they are getting back into the game. Only 38 points the deficit between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc at the present time. This is kind of the race pace, just to look at it right over the course of the Grand Prix in Austria. You can see in terms of the average time, it's very, very close between Verstappen and, of course, the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. But towards the end, he was wrestling with that problem Leclerc, and it was on the kind of hard stints really early on in the race where, it just seemed like the Ferrari was just so much quicker, right? So really it was that tyre degradation issue that we talked about for Red Bull. Now, whether this upgrade is to try and fix that, or whether it's to kind of reduce the weight that we heard rumoured that was causing Red Bull a lot of their issues relatively recently, or if it is going to try and make their tyre degradation better, they might be helped by the fact that even though Paul Ricard still does have some faster flowing corners like Silverstone and like Austria at times, Austria generally is a more rear limited circuit. So the kind of way this means is if there's a lot of kind of slower corners with big acceleration zones, as Austria has had in many corners actually, that's going to be more of a rear limited track where seemingly the Red Bull does seem to suffer a bit more. Now the Ferrari seems better in those kind of settings, but the Red Bull might be better on front limited tracks. The likes of Silverstone, Paul Ricard is very similar, where effectively there's not too many slower corners with big braking zones. It's more sweeping corners you might see around Silverstone, for example, and of course the circuit here in France and the Hungaroring as well. So interesting to see that potentially, even though it does seem like with the kind of full weight on the car, they were really struggling with their tyre wear, it might be so that it was only kind of rear limited that was really affecting the Red Bull the most, and at Paul Ricard it might be better, especially if they can get this new upgrades to come along as well. So definitely intrigued to your perspective on that one in the comment section below. Just to finish off with this one as well, I thought a rather remarkable statistic. Hamilton, after last weekend's, has equalled the amount of podiums of Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost combined. So, well, quite the number, 186. Will he get to 200? I suppose that remains to be seen if the Mercedes can actually be a more competitive car as the year goes on. Because right now, Mercedes are effectively just scraping podiums whenever something bad happens ahead of them. But they believe they're only about 2 or 3 tenths off the pace, even of the Ferrari around Austria, a circuit style that hasn't necessarily suited them. They believe Paul Ricard, they're also going to be a threat, right? So it's not just the Red Bull Ferrari show here. Mercedes believe they're going to be a threat in France as well. And hopefully that continues through the rest of the season, because a three-way battle for race wins at the very least would be very exciting. And it also potentially would favour a team like Ferrari, if I'm pretty sure Mattia Binotto actually said this after Silverstone, that after it seemed like Mercedes were kind of back a little bit, he was like, yeah, I welcome Mercedes being back, because that gives more of an opportunity for Hamilton, Russell to take points off Verstappen and Perez, and then of course will help Ferrari and the constructors. Of course that could backfire on them massively, but it does allow for more possibilities in the way this championship could potentially turn. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.